Yeah, next we have Vinay. Vinay, where are you? He's coming. So Vinay is another telco chap from yet another operator starting with T. In this case, Telus, all the way from Canada. Canada's an interesting market. The operators there have got a very strong hold on the market and work together, which is quite unusual. So Vinay's going to talk to us about what Telus and partners, I think, have been up to with API development. Canada is interesting in that it's one market where the GSMA One API has...
One API was popular there.
Yeah, it's actually made some progress, which is not the same in most of the world, where the GSMA One API has been met with a certain amount of indifference. So I'm really interested to find out what Vinay has got to say about what they've done in Canada to make this work, and what the magic sauce is. So over to you, Vinay.
Hi. It is actually a very good opportunity that I get to talk after some of the other T operators have spoken, and I can build on top of that. So let me first introduce Telus, as James just introduced it to be a Canadian operator. But further than that, we are a true quad play operator. So we've got business in every segment of the thing. One of the things I'd highlight is it's really at the bottom, that while we have those quad play opportunities, we are really looking at what is the innovation happening, where's the business moving forward. And interestingly, we are looking at out-of-the-box areas. We're looking more at Telus Health as an opportunity of growth. We're also looking at consumer health, mobile payments, commerce. It is things that a typical operator may shy away from. And we are saying, no, actually, that's where we want to be. In an approach of trying to build the APIs, we've looked at both the internal and external opportunities. Yes, externally, as I mentioned earlier, health, M2M, IoT, those are the areas of growth. But we are also looking internally and saying, okay, we really want to be in a place where we can integrate with other partners. But more interestingly, we want to really address our customers' experience. We want the customer to have a unique experience irrespective of which screen he's using to interact with Telus, or which mechanism, whether it's an IVR, call center, chat. Irrespective of how he's interacting, he gets the same experience. Well, how do you do that? Well, you have APIs behind the channels. So we have multitude of channels, but behind those channels we have APIs such that the customer gets the same experience irrespective of where he comes from. And what does it mean? What is the result in the market of that? Well, if you notice the number at the center, the 0.9% churn, well, it's the 9th quarter in a row we have had less than 1% churn, where it's significant. The value of a customer to an operator is huge, and the cost of acquisition is high. But if I keep the customers I have and I keep them happy, that's fantastic. That's what you want. And the way we have focused on doing that is by focusing on the customer experience from a marketing perspective. But as a technology, what does that mean? Is having APIs at the back end to enable that experience. The external part, and I'll just kind of, if you look at the slide, it's split two ways. At the bottom, we have all these services that, as a telco, we own. And historically, a telco would guard these services, as these are services I have, and to connect with me.
Use that one.
Sure. To use those services.
Oh no. Is it on?
That doesn't seem. Is it on? All right. Historically, the operator would guard those services, would not expose those services. It would be really difficult to integrate with those services. At Telus, our approach is the opposite. We want to expose these services. We have a number of partners that connect to those. We have a team of Telus partner managers whose job is to go out, find those partners, and help them connect with us. I myself wouldn't even know all the partners who have connected, which is fantastic because they use the APIs. And once the API is published, I don't really need to know who is calling the API. The reason at the top I divided that into 2 sections or 3 sections is we have APIs which are being leveraged by our partners. But then we also have APIs which are being leveraged by larger enterprise or business segments. And finally, we have APIs which are for internal use. How do you solve the problem of the legacy IT systems? Well, you put APIs on them so that you hide the secret sauce of what's the complexity of those telco APIs, right? So we've really focused both internally and externally. Externally is to monetize those APIs and drive business, connect with the M2M partners, connect with IoT, connect with health, connect with commerce. But internally as well, we have continued building those APIs. The last question was really interesting, where what is the challenges as an operator? What do you face? Well, one of the biggest challenges we face is we have multitude of interfaces. As I said in the beginning, we are a quad play operator, so we have all the 4 lines of business that are really calling us. But on top of that, we have Telus is the main operator, but we have multiple brands in the market. We have our own MVNOs that we support from the same platforms. So you're essentially having multiple customer experiences over those quad play channels. And we have multiple channels where the customer can talk to us. So if you start multiplying this, it becomes a computational problem, and how do you support all these interfaces? That is one of the biggest challenges. Each channel provides a differentiated experience, right? So within those APIs, you do not have any business logic. Typically as an operator, in traditional world, that's how they would have developed it. When a project gets done, the project will include the business logic of what the project is, and that would have got built into those APIs, and hence those APIs would not be used by anybody else. So we had to really force a change in mindset within the organization in trying to drive the focus on APIs without any business logic. The API should be independent of who's calling it. The third bullet, alignment takes times and concerns. If you've worked with any large operator, you'd know that any project costs millions of dollars and very expensive. But it belongs to that one silo. If a project is started in wireline or wireless space or within M2M, that project's goal is to deliver the functionality that they want, and they work in that silo. Well, I come in from the side and say, no, don't work in a silo. Work with us and help us build APIs, which will add value to other projects as well. The business owners are really not interested, right? And so getting this change in mindset, getting the organizational buy-in from the very top, and making sure that when a new concept comes in, we talk not just about what the concept is going to deliver, but what are the reusable capabilities, what are the business capabilities that the project brings in. That significant mindset change, it helps us. Finally, the organizational structure goes part and parcel with the earlier point, right? The organizations are structured around lines of business, and the projects get funded, a project team gets put together. Well, the goal of that project team, the goal of that unit is to deliver against that project. You ask them to focus on building other APIs or building it with APIs, which might take them slightly longer and slightly more expensive maybe. Goes against what their mandate was. So how did we overcome some of those challenges? As it had said, the first thing we did is we put a core cross-functional team together, both from business, technology, engineering aspects, right? The mandate of this team was educate the organization, drive the change in culture, show the benefits of what we have done with our APIs. Telus has been working with APIs for about 8 years now, so we have a very good set of APIs that we have exposed. We have good business cases in terms of which partners have used APIs, how much revenue we have made on an API basis, right? So educate the organization, drive that change, get buy-in from the senior management in supporting us in building with APIs. Identify key projects during their funding stage, which is important as large projects come. So let's say we have a project in the M2M space, and we're going to spend a large amount of money on that project. If we work with the project team in the beginning and collaboratively find out what are they building, what are the reusable capabilities that are being built in that project. Because no design has been put in paper, there's no code yet, it is easier to change the thinking and change it such that that code can be reused in other lines of business, right? there's no reason why you develop APIs for, let's say, IoT that can't be used for m-commerce or big data. Right? The third thing we did is we reached out very broadly in the organization. Right? We reached out to all the emerging lines of business, looked at their roadmap. What is M2M doing next year? What is the health organization doing? What is big data doing? What is happening in mobile wallet? What's happening in m-commerce? We worked with those teams to understand their roadmap, but from a perspective of which of those capabilities actually can easily cross boundaries. Right? Because we can identify those at the roadmap level, so a year ahead, I know what are the capabilities that are required by those organizations, and I can find out opportunities where we can build those APIs such that when the project comes along next year, the capabilities are already in place for it to be leveraged. This was one of the secret sauces that actually helped Telus quite a bit in moving forward. The last thing, publish and broadcast the existing capabilities. Any large operator, you have 20,000, 25,000 employees. Not everybody knows what are the capabilities you have. Right? By publicizing those capabilities, making everybody aware of those capabilities, you reduce the chance of somebody rebuilding an existing capability or reusing. And that finally was the last thing. So open to questions at this point.
That's brilliant. Right, questions? No questions so far. Well, I've got a couple for you, as you would imagine. It's clear to me that you're doing a lot more than just your standard GSMA One API stuff.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of stuff going on there.
So let me add, so GSMA One API was something we really looked at hard at 2012, 2013. And the reason we looked at it hard was, like Poland, the Canadian market is really divided into 3 large operators. And by working together, the idea was if we can publish this core set of APIs, we can enable partners not just working with Telus, but working with all 3 operators, and those APIs can then be agnostic to whether the customer belongs to one operator or the other one. Right? But it did run into some challenges, so we have kind of backed away from it in 2014, 2015. But the desire in the market to work with other operators is still there, and Telus is driving towards working with other operators and building much more capabilities.
Okay, you know what? One of the most interesting bits are the bits that went wrong. And you talked a little bit about the bits that went wrong, but what do you think was the most valuable thing that you got out of the bits that went wrong?
The one thing I think we got was the immediate effect on the other operators. Like Telus is quite advanced in terms of its APIs. We've been working with it, but the other operators were not at that level. So you're trying to get operators who are at different levels of maturity to work together, and therein lies a little challenge. But I think there's more happening in the industry now where if you look at identity, for example, I know we have had discussions earlier this morning as well about federated identity or the desire to actually move away from having federated identity. From our perspective, the discussions we are having is, can we, as a collective operator set, work at identifying our customers in the same way? Right? So from an app perspective, at least the authentication and identification of a customer could be standardized. Right? Whether we do it as part of one API or outside, doesn't really matter. What matters is, from an app developer's perspective, can we provide a unified mechanism to authenticate and validate our customers?
You know what, you're speaking my language now. I can get really excited about things like authentication as a service. And I think for operators, there's a lot of money to be made in there.
Absolutely. All of the, money is the bottom line. Yes, you are adding efficiency. Yes, you are adding customer experience, and you're improving the way you're doing business, but it is all about cost savings and providing more revenue opportunities from the emerging business.
Absolutely. And to use one of Alan's buzzwords from last year, it's not about minutes anymore. Those revenues are just fading into the distance. So we've got to go and we've got to mine, we've got to find new revenue opportunities.
Absolutely.
And it's a wonderfully exciting time to do this. And we have a question at the back, which is exciting because I have to get there, talking as I go.
Villegas from OpenCell. Talking about money, which is the bottom line, what's the business model that you have behind? How do you monetize your API services?
Thank you for the question. The two ways to monetize the APIs. The ones we are exposing externally, they're easier to monetize in terms of, hey, I know the number of partners who are calling those APIs. I know what their revenue model is. There's a revenue split between Telus and those partners in terms of the revenue earned from there. That's an easier model to understand and digest. The more interesting model is, how do I monetize the APIs that are being built for internal purposes? As an organization, we spend millions of dollars in developing new technology, right? But as I build more APIs, how do I demonstrate to the organization that those new APIs reduce the cost? What is the cost avoidance model, right? So one of the things I talked about there is looking very broadly at the roadmaps of the different lines of business and the different business units. The reason you do that is because I know what's on the roadmap of those different business units. I can build capabilities which impact multiple business units, and I can demonstrate the cost avoidance from those business units. So for those internal APIs and the cost of developing those internal APIs, the business model is more in terms of cost avoidance, right? But as an organization, we look at both pieces because both are important, right? The revenue you generate from outside as well as your cost avoidance. Hopefully that answers the question. Sure.
As we saw from your presentation, critical for the success was, being able to engage with different part of your company, right? Having a lot of stakeholders buying in the idea. Where your organization fit within the overall company organization that gives you the freedom, the ability to take all those stakeholders in the discussion.
Thank you. Excellent question again. My team sits in the product management side. So yes, we are on the business side of the organization, and we are within the product management structure. The advantage of being in the product management structure is it allows me to work with the other product managers who are defining the roadmaps of those teams, right? So I get to work with them closely. But I also work with the business development team. I work with the Telus partner manager teams. I work with the technology teams to figure out, what are the low-hanging fruits? Are there easier APIs I can develop at the back end? So my team, reaches out very broadly, but we start with the product management side because we like to know what's on the roadmap of these different business teams. Hopefully that answers the question.
Greg from Poland. Yesterday we were talking about one API and exposure of API at national level, at country level. And to be honest, I forgot to ask you because I realized that I've seen some announcement that it was a few years ago that WAC was selected as a, let's say, national standard in Canada. And the question is, what happened and how it looks like from your perspective right now? And do you have any relationship with your competitors? And what do you think about that?
Yeah. So in terms of the relationship with the competitors, yes, we do have. We collaboratively work with our competitors in the space of, actually in multiple spaces, but specifically in terms of APIs. We still are having those conversations. Yes, the enthusiasm that was there with one API in 2012-13 kind of has faded away. But we still are working with them to trying to find out, between the three, can we come up with a common set of attributes, common set of APIs that we can publish. So those conversations are still going and hopefully will bring fruit. Okay.
Brilliant. Okay, Vinay, you clearly did a good job there because not only did you do a really good presentation, but you got some really good questions too.
Excellent. Isn't that interesting?
So that was brilliant. So can we give a big round of applause for Vinay?